Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone who is joining from different parts of the world. I am your host, Ali Nomani, and today I have the pleasure to be joined by the presenter, Martha, and two former students of the Model G20, Andy Chen, who is joining us from Sydney, Australia, where it's bright and early. I believe it's 5 a.m. And Jennifer, who's joining me from New York, upstate New York, where it's 3:30 p.m. And I'm hosting this webinar from Lahore, Pakistan, where it's 12:30 a.m. So we truly are a global community, and this feels like a global experience. And so I will, we'll be talking mostly about the Model G20 Summit and in general, and in particular, the virtual summit. And I'll start off with a little bit of a lengthy introduction of myself, how I got involved with the Model G20, and how it changed the nature of my school and the opportunities available to my students when I used to be a principal of a school in Cambridge, Massachusetts. For 4 years, I was a high school principal in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And so we're gonna focus a little bit of our story there and then have a panel discussion. So this is some of what I've done. I was a mentor for the School Leadership and Teacher Fellows Program faculty, and myself am a graduate of the School Leadership Program and the Urban Scholars Programs at Harvard University. I've been a course contributor where I helped the MIT Teaching Systems Lab design their course on schools of the 21st century. And then last year, I completed a postgraduate fellowship in from Boston College's Lynch Leadership Academy, where we trained some of the best principals in Massachusetts, and that was a very exciting experience. So in 2015, I took over as the principal of Community Charter School of Cambridge. CCSC is a low-income charter school that was established in 2005. So I took on in the 10th year of the school. At that time, my school was 94% students of color. 70% of them came from families that relied on state assistance for food, housing, healthcare, and so on. 90%, so 9 out of 10 of my students were the first in their families to go to college. And we had very small class sizes of about 45 students per year. Because we were a charter school, we were not allowed to charge a fee, and we did not have any admission criteria. So we took students from the general public by a lottery, and our students came to us 2.5 grades behind in math and 3 grades behind in reading in 6th grade. And then what we focused on was pure academic success, lots of standardized tests, and intense competition between students to get them to be academically rigorous and proceed on to college with a lot of academic preparedness. Up until in the first 10 years, our 45 graduates per year had managed to get into these colleges. These were the top ranked colleges that our students had ever matriculated to. It was a big deal for us. Imagine most of our students, the vast majority of our students hadn't had parents or in many cases, even a family member attend college before. And so today I want to tell you about 3 friends, Yishak, Alvin, and Rohit. All of them are immigrants to the United States. Yishak's family came from Ethiopia. He joined us in 6th grade. He's the only child. Alvin's family came from China, and Rohit's family came from India. None of their parents had attended college in the US. And you know, when my first year, when I took over as high school principal, these 3 kids came to me as 9th graders, and they said, you know, we're really hardworking students. We feel like students year after year, we look up to our seniors. Remember, this school is 6th through 12th, a middle school and a high school. And then each year they said, we don't see students getting into some of the best schools. because of the lack of opportunities present at our school. And so despite what we consider ourselves to be, we don't see universities receiving rich enough applications from us to be able to admit us. And so I convinced them to stay, and I said, well, I promise that I'll stay as long as you will, and I will do everything I can to make sure you get into some of those schools. And so I started to change the nature of our high school and move away from intense competition in academics. And so, you know, this was some of the reason why. Schools these days are still operating under the industrialization model, which was designed with this idea of 30 to 40 kids sitting in a straight room looking at a teacher, really being able to follow instructions and focused on basic maths, so basic arithmetic and reading. And this curriculum was preparing students to join factories. So the economy was shifting around the turn of the 19th century from 20th century, excuse me, from an agrarian economy to a manufacturing economy in most developed countries. And therefore the curriculum that was introduced and the way of public schooling that was introduced was designed to create factory workers who could follow instructions really well. And so this is what colleges see year after year after year. Colleges want, you know, students who have the depth and the fortitude and the vision to focus on these things, the challenges and the opportunities that are in front of them, and not the same, you know, basic education that most of the core curricula are founded around. And so the reason for this is that we realize in our tracking and in our watching these elite universities that they are targeting today the students who they know will become the Nobel laureates, who they know will have the breakthroughs in research, who they know will be the CEOs and presidents of companies that are changing the nature of the world down the road. So Harvard, for example, is really proud of its association with Mark Zuckerberg, who has changed the way in which we interact with each other around the world. And so that's the kind of candidate that they were looking for. And today, those universities know that some of the topics that will become relevant to humans in 30 years from now are these things. And none of our school systems, at least in the United States and as well as the O and A levels curriculum that I'm really familiar with, were offering anything of this nature. And at the high school level, we were sending students to college every year unprepared to participate in the dialogues around these problems, which are going to be faced by all of us by 2050. And so, what did CCSC do? We started looking for a partner which would allow our students to expand their horizons through a diversified curricula. We got courses such as, so we partnered with Nova Academy, and we were able to introduce courses such as Living in a Connected World, which allowed our students to concurrently study with students around the world. We engaged in experiential learning opportunities, and we also participated for the first time in the history of our school in this multinational exchange, which is the Model G20 that we're going to discuss today. And this is what Nova was offering at that time. So this was the coursework, and here we have the summits. And so our students started participating in these summits. The first one was in 2017, where we sent our delegation to Harvard University. And then we sent our students to some of these other places around the world where students from other parts of the world were coming and taking on leadership roles along with students who, and forming very diverse teams with students who sometimes didn't belong to, or oftentimes didn't belong to their culture, didn't speak their language, didn't their social customs were different, and that, we started to see a change in our students because they were, at the Model G20 summits, they were faced with real problems. They had to take on the roles of real leaders. They had to really think outside of being an American, think outside of being a Haitian immigrant, think outside of being from Ethiopia, but really take on the hats of world leaders who are representing their countries. They were put into, so it wasn't like we sent a team from my school, Community Charter School of Cambridge, but I sent a group of students who were then further divided into smaller teams based on students' profiles and based on their interests. And these teams had to come together through team building activities, and then really advocate together, think together as a team on and solve real world problems that they could present solutions to the world leaders of the country that they were representing. And it provided them, they had to give speeches to convince others of their points of view. They had to negotiate their positions, and then they had to plan to take action based on those results. And so, when I started to see these students coming back from these summits, they were so empowered. They had never taken on the hats of leaders, of ambassadors of change, of being able to, take an authentic interest in their community, because they didn't at that time. Our curriculum didn't allow them the opportunity to have these types of experiences where they could take on challenges within their communities, and in an academic setting, advocate for those challenges, plan ahead with their friends, and then go back out into those communities and try to affect change. And for this, when they had come back from these summits, they were part of an international community of students with whom they could partner, and realize really that the students who were facing these issues in Cambridge, Massachusetts, some of the gentrification, neighborhood gentrification issues, urban gardening issues, urban sprawl issues, pollution. Some of their friends sitting in Sao Paulo who they had attended the summit with, or Beijing or Shanghai or Lahore, were facing some of the same problems, and they started to advocate for really issues that had been around them and in their community this whole time, but they hadn't developed yet the lenses to see. And so, one thing that happened as a result of this is that our students started to because they developed these authentic interests, they started to appear as more authentic, fulfilled, engaging, and exciting human beings. And so before I tell you some of the results that I had in my school, I want to remind you of who we were serving. 70% of our students were low income, 90% the first in their families to go to college, and a very small class size that would admitted without an admission test and without any consideration for tuition. And within 4 years of this partnership, these are our results. Within 4 years, we were able to send students from a small school in Cambridge to every one of these universities. Multiple students were admitted to every one of these universities, and multiple other universities that we hadn't been able to get students into before. And that happened not to be listed on here. And so we started with Ishak, Alvin, and Rohit. Ishak was the first student from our school to attend Harvard University. On a full scholarship, Ishak is studying to be a pediatrician now. Alvin, it says Harvard here. He was admitted to Harvard as well, but he attended MIT. He is the first student from our school to attend MIT University. And Rohit was the first student from our school to attend Brown. And these students are really, they played the role of ambassadors in some of these summits as well, but they were the ones who really took on the mantle of student leadership in our school and ensured that, we had a full participation in Model G20 every year from our first year onwards. And now I'd like to reintroduce our panel because we're going to be moving toward the panel discussion. I'm Ali, joining you from Pakistan. We have Martha joining us from Boston. Martha is the designer of this summit. She heads the academic team that has put this program together for us, and she'll be telling us a little bit about it in a few minutes. Jennifer graduated from Potsdam High School and was a G20 participant for, I believe, 3 years, and she's currently attending Columbia University in New York City. Andy Chen, our youngest panelist, is also our bravest because he's up at 5 a.m. and he's making sure that he doesn't wake up his parents. Andy is currently at the Scots College and very soon going to attend Australian National University. So welcome, good morning, good afternoon to you all. And Martha, I will start with a question for you, if that's okay. And my question is, what is the Model G20? And what is the virtual version of this summit?
Excellent. So like we were talking about before, our typical Model G20 summit is a simulation of the Model G20. So in some ways similar to Model UN, but very much where students all go to a conference center together. They're playing the role of leaders from different countries. And for this summit, because it's a virtual summit, we adapted the topic a bit as well. And so students will, in the virtual summit, be playing the role of various government ministers from G20 countries who have come together for a summit about how to handle the economic fallout that has resulted from COVID-19. And so they'll be working together to collaborate, negotiate, debate, discuss, to try to find solutions to these issues together.
Thank you. All right, Andy, let's go to you. What summit did you attend, and what was your biggest takeaway from it?
Hi, I've attended both the Y20 Task Force in Japan last year as well as the Y7 Virtual Summit. And I think both programs have expanded my knowledge in a lot of areas such as youth representation, or for example, like more specific topics such as like the relationship between the economics and the environment, which sounds simple, but it's actually a lot more nuanced. But I think more importantly, it's improved the way I analyze information as well as the way I present my own opinions. And I think that's something, as you were talking about earlier in the slides, that both of these skills are crucial in our increasingly digitized world, especially in terms of college applications, where our like logical thinking and communication ability is prioritized over our ability to rote learn and to recant knowledge. And so I think people who attend an MG20 summit will gain a host of new skills, as well as walk away with a bunch of great connections and friends.
Thank you, Andy. So thinking about some of the skills that Andy spoke about, Martha, I'm going to come back to you and ask you, in designing the summit, what were the objectives what were your and your academic team's objectives? Like, what were you hoping students who participate in this virtual summit get out of it?
Yeah, so anytime we design any educational program at Nova, we design it with the principle of constructionism. So instead of direct instruction, where we just sort of tell students things and want them to memorize, we instead give them the tools, some guidance and some mentorship. We rely on them to make meaning for themselves. And so in the summit, we really expect students to show leadership, and we'll guide them through that. And they're going to be searching for solutions to real world problems. And that will require them to think about economics, think about trade, to think about society in general. COVID-19 has impacted a broad variety of things that's impacted different countries differently. And that's something they'll also have to balance.
Excellent, thank you. Jennifer, could you tell us what summits you attended?
Yeah, so I went to the 2018 Model G20 Summit that was held at Harvard and the Boston Convention Center. There I went as a student participant, and I also participated in the 2018 and 2019 Y20 task forces, which were held in Argentina and Japan. And I went to the 2019 Model G20 Summit in Beijing as a lead ambassador.
Excellent. And so what would you say were the best parts of the summit? And can you tell us also about a friend you're still in touch with?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess I'll talk about the 2018 one because that was where I participated as a student. Prior to that summit, I'd never really done extracurriculars that made me feel extremely empowered and like I had responsibility over something with weight. So I was assigned to be the head of state of the Brazil delegation. And in that capacity, I worked with some of the smartest and most diligent, hardworking students I'd ever met up until that point. I had a great experience just running around this giant convention center, staying up till like 3 a.m. in hotels, negotiating with people, coming up with agreements, and just making a lot of friendships that I continue to this day. And one person I'm still friends with, very good friends with, is Kiara Ortiz. She's going to be a freshman at Dartmouth College this fall. We also went to Argentina together, and we're currently working on a few different like policy groups and in political advocacy. And I met her at the 2018 summit. She's just a phenomenal person and very, very smart.
All right, Andy, I'm going to ask you the same question. Thank you, Jennifer. Andy, what is, can you tell us about a friend you made that you're still in touch with?
Yeah, similar to Jen, I'm in touch with a lot of my friends from my summits, and especially the task force, because I think the task force is a great opportunity and an environment for people to meet like-minded people, and especially when you're together for 14 days, you end up with a lot of friends. But I think that that's not to say that a virtual summit won't let you walk away with some of these same great friends and make the same relationships that we've had. But for example, I'm still in touch with Brittany Saunders. She's a great person. We still talk. She's recently moved to Utah, and we've just been talking about how the curriculum is different in Mexico as compared to the US.
So, one of the things I remember at my time as principal was this favorite thing that students would walk away from these summits is the opportunity to connect with like-minded students from around the world. And so could you talk a little bit about how in this virtual version of the summit, you guys as designers have made sure to preserve opportunities for students to interact with each other in the same way?
Yes, definitely. So as everyone knows, it's a virtual summit. So students will be connecting through video calls, through Slack, through email. But the way we've designed the summit is students spend almost all their time in small discussion groups. And I say small, it's usually less than 10 people. And so there are opportunities where the whole group comes together. But the summit really is about small groups, and not just the same small group throughout the summit. Instead, students will be rematched based on their ministerial position, their country position, and other things. So they can meet a variety of people throughout the summit and have the chance to have a genuine conversation with them.
And Martha, here, still thinking about like conversations between students as well as conversations within the simulation. Would you say students have to be native English fluent in order to?
Not at all. We designed the summit for students with a wide variety of English abilities. Students should be conversational, but students are free to research in their native language if they need to, and do other things in their native language as well. So we really do try to accommodate students from a variety of backgrounds, because international diversity is what makes the summit exciting.
Great, as it does this panel. Jennifer and Andy, whichever one of you wants to take this question, what is, when you say, you know, the word simulation means different things to different people, and the word G20 also means different things to different people. So in the context of a model G20 or a G20 simulation, what does simulation mean?
Jen, do you want to answer, or shall I?
Well, you unmuted first, so if your thoughts, go ahead.
Yeah, I think people, when you hear the word simulation, people jump to the conclusion that it's fake, right? Because that's sort of in some regards what the word means. But I think more importantly, simulation means an opportunity for people to try out new skills, make new friends, learn about new things on a stage where mistakes are acceptable and where they actually have this opportunity to learn and grow, because they're not actually, like, for example, as we did in the Y20, actually creating a communique that we're submitting, right? A simulation is an opportunity for us to make mistakes. And so, like, through these mistakes, I think we can grow a lot more. And I think that's sort of the power of these MG20 summits, in that we are able to develop ourselves. And I think the word G20, that's sort of pretty self-explanatory. It's just the group of 20 countries who are the most, I think it's the most economically powerful. I don't know, Jen, someone needs to clarify on this. But yeah, it's pretty much, it means that we're able to represent as delegates we're able to represent countries who are actually able to make a difference. And I think it's sort of an important aspect that we're actually representing countries who actually can make a real difference to this world, because it sort of provides a degree of realism in that we can actually make policy that is able to be implemented.
Thank you. Jennifer, would you add to that a little bit, please?
Yeah. So I'd say that as a student, there are a lot of different things that you can do to like develop leadership skills and research skills, public speaking skills, and so on. But the way to kind of take on something that feels like it is actual weight and that you can use your like intellect to make high level decisions about is going to be in a simulation. And programs like the Model G20 or Model UN or other similar like sandbox style extracurriculars, I think are great for developing this lasting sense of empowerment and experience with a leadership position, which is definitely something that I got out of participating in many different Model G20 programs. Andy was right. The G20 is comprised of the 20 countries with the largest GDPs in the world. And typically, like before I participated in this program, I hadn't heard much about the G20. I'd mostly done stuff like Model UN, but I found that the Model G20 is oftentimes more fulfilling. A lot of Model UN conferences that I've been to, I'm sure this has also been the experience of other people. People don't take it very seriously, and you come up with like a lot of ridiculous proposals that haven't taken the actual policy ramifications and budget limitations and like actual geopolitical contexts into account. But that is something that you have to do at the Model G20 because it's a more centralized program, and just because of how it's run. For example, you're assigned to be like the minister of a particular area for a specific country, such as say Minister of Health for Argentina. And when you have that specific of a role, you have to do a lot more research, understand your position better, the situation better, and you have more of a specific and like niche category to work with, which I think is very good for actually learning and getting stuff out of it.
Thank you, Jennifer. Martha, hi. Can you tell us how do participating, so most of our participants come from very sort of highly academic competitive setting. What do high school students with that type of mindset and background, how does the summit help them achieve their goals?
Yeah, it's always very interesting because some students really compare to Model UN is that Model G20 is both competitive, which those students I think are well prepared for, but it's also very collaborative. And so I think it requires students to use different skill sets and ones that they're often really excited to use. And that's something we hear over and over again from students, is that they really like the chance to collaborate with their peers to come up with solutions and not always be locked in competition with them. And so I think students who come from these really elite competitive schools, they bring those skills with them, but they often find that they use skills that they don't get to use as often. And I think that they develop those, and that makes it a really positive experience.
Thank you. So 1 second. All right, sorry about that. Andy, let's go to you for this question. How many countries can you name where other participants came from? And what was the strangest thing you learned that is totally normal in other cultures? Or what was something that surprised you about another culture? Strange might be a negative word, but what is something that was surprising?
I guess, off the top of the head, probably like 10 to 15 probably would be a good guess for the countries that I can name. I think something that's a bit strange, well, not really strange, but more a local custom that I'm not used to is the fact that in Japanese, you often have to give business cards every time you meet employees of a different company. And that's something which is very different in Australia when everything's done with a handshake and that's all you do. So that was something very strange to me that I've figured out over the experiences.
And what about you? What would you say to that, Jennifer? What was something you learned that surprised you? And can you name some of the countries you remember participants from?
Yeah. I guess it's not strange. It was just like more surprising and unique. When I visited Argentina for the Y20 task force, I was just struck by how differently their agricultural systems work and like the amount of meat that they eat. And I remember having a couple vegetarian friends on the trip and they were rather upset at that. but I guess it's probably common across a lot of Latin American countries to like have a lot of meat in their diets. As for countries that I can name students from, there's no way I can name all of them. Every single summit and event that Nova's hosted has had like so many countries represented, but like the UK, Canada, Mexico, Peru, Colombia, Argentina, Brazil, China, Japan, Russia, France, maybe Germany. There's a lot of different countries. I can't possibly name them all.
Okay, thank you. So my last question again goes to the students. Sorry, Martha. And this is, you've participated in a bunch of summits, your friends have participated in a bunch of summits. What would you, Andy, say to students who are on the fence about joining? And Jennifer, what would you say to students who are on the fence about joining?
Well, I think that the answer is pretty simple. You shouldn't be on the fence, you should be joining. But to explain this answer in a bit more detail, if you're on the fence, I think it means that you, to some degree, have an interest in diplomacy, international relations, youth engagement, or one of those areas, right? That's why you've gotten some interest in this program in the first place. And I think the best thing you can do at this point is to get involved, because not only because of the friends and the connections that Jen and we've always been talking about, but also because the skills and knowledge that you would otherwise gain. I think there's very little to lose with doing one of these summits. Like at worst, you walk off, not learn anything with like 50 new great friends, but like at best, you would probably walk away with a lot more knowledge, a greater idea of how to think logically, analytically, and to write, and to be like involved in the public policy area, and to like write these proposals. And I think one regret that I personally have is that I didn't find out about Nova Academy sooner. I only joined last year, and I think that's just something that I wish I really studied sooner. So especially to the younger people who are in this webinar right now, I'd really encourage you to get involved.
Thank you, Andy. Jennifer?
Yeah, I agree with everything that Andy just said. Another thing for me generally is that when I'm trying to weigh major decisions, it's like, it's good to be able to know all the pros and cons and like to give each choice that you could make like some thorough thinking. But the thing is, with an opportunity like this, you cannot reliably predict all the opportunities that will flow from it and all the different advantages that you can have over time from the connections that you've built. So it's hard to make an objective choice because you don't know all the good things that can come from it. And when I first went to the 2018 Model G20 Summit, there was no way I could have known that that would lead to me participating in task forces, getting involved as a lead ambassador, getting to write policy recommendations for the actual G20 through the task force, and developing connections that I'm still using now in a lot of my political advocacy organizations that I'm a part of. So like Andy said, you do know the possible cons of not doing this, which is that you might not learn as much as you'd hoped, or because of the virtual format, like some things might be a bit more difficult, but all the positive things, you cannot predict those. And my mantra in life, which I would like highly recommend to all of you, is just anytime you see an opportunity, just seize it.
All right, thank you so much to the panelists. Your job is not done. We have about 10 minutes or so for question and answers. Folks, so if you would like to ask a question, it's right above you as well. You can scroll down and go to the Q&A and ask us a question there. I see 2 questions already. First is, where can we register? That answer is up on your screen right now, www.modelg20.nova.com. Question from Wendy, will the program provide a certificate? The answer to that is yes. You will, students who are participating will get a certificate for their participation. Okay. Another question, what if I'm joining from a different time zone? So folks, like this summit, the virtual nature, we have gone virtual this year in order to accommodate students from all over the world. So there's 4 of us here, and we all 4 are from different time zones. Maybe Martha and Jennifer are in the same time zone. But typically, this is something we've been used to, NOVA has been used to in past summits. We've had students from about 30 countries participate in these before, from different parts of the world, and we're used to it. Sometimes you might have to wake up really early. At other times, you might have to go home, go to sleep really late. But if it's for a few days and you're up for it, I think the time zone will not be much of an issue. So there's another question. Is there any award during the virtual summit? Martha, would you like to take that one, please?
Yes, there will be. So this summit will have winners in first, second, and third place that will be evaluated, and there will also be some other awards given out. So yes.
Can you mention what type of awards a student might get?
So we don't want to reveal all of them before the summit, but for example, there will be, in addition to the first, second, and third place, which are the overall scores, a team might win an award for having the best overall health policies and plans, or a team might win an award for having the best overall trade policies and plans. We also recognize things like public speaking, negotiation, and also being really helpful and accommodating to other students in the summit, showing leadership that way.
Great, thank you. And folks, if you notice, I just made a correction. The website is actually modelg20.nova.com. There's no www before that. That's it. Okay. Can college students participate? Martha, could you take that question as well?
As the summit is designed for high school students, but if you'd like to reach out to someone at NOVA, we can talk about it and just make sure that it's a good fit for you.
Thank you, Martha. When is the conference and what is the registration deadline? We should have had that up here, but Martha, could you go through the dates?
Sure. So the conference will begin, the summit will begin October 3rd. And I believe the last deadline to sign up is in late September, I believe the 25th, but it's listed on the NOVA website.
Thank you. Okay, so are there a lot of public speaking opportunities? And a student said, that's my biggest fear. Are these opportunities or are these requirements? Jennifer, Andy, what do you have to say? And Martha, maybe you want to add after they're done.
I mean, I'm sure Martha can speak more to the specific opportunities for the virtual summit, but in the ones that I've participated in, public speaking is built into everything that you do. Most of the discussions that you have with other students will involve it. If you organize any kind of like group on the side to speak to for negotiations, that will involve public speaking. And I definitely learned a lot of public speaking skills through participating in Model G20s.
Yeah, just adding on what Jen said, I think public speaking, especially with the ones that I've participated in, public speaking has always been a huge part of it, but I think it's not like a really big jump for example, a person who's never done public speaking before to do it, because it's a lot of the times you're doing public speaking in these NOVA events, they're at more of an informal atmosphere where you're just around with like at a round table and you're trying to present some ideas and you sort of just work your way up. There's no need to like jump on the podium or the lectern and like pull out a big speech, but it's just like you can work your way up. And I think there's sort of this like stepped opportunities, which is why these events are kind of good for developing your public speaking skills.
Thank you. Martha?
Yeah, so in the summit, first of all, I'll say virtual public speaking is a little bit easier, so just to calm anyone's nerves. But in the summit, students are able to choose their role to some degree. And so all roles do require some public speaking, but that can vary from the heads of state who will address the entire group for 2 minutes on the final day. Or if you're, let's say the Minister of Agriculture, you wouldn't need to do that. You could instead speak to a smaller group for a shorter amount of time. But every student will do some degree of public speaking, but the level of it can be up to you.
Thank you. We have 2 questions from teachers who want to join. So we unfortunately have very limited space and a lot of students already signing up. So we want only student participants. However, teachers of schools where students are participating from, and a school counselor who's asked the same question, you are allowed and in fact encouraged to audit the summit and is of no charge to you if you have any students attending. So you can both supervise your students' participation as well as audit the quality of the program. Another question, do I need to attend all 5 days if I sign up? Martha, that's probably for you.
Yes, so that is one thing that we will need is students will need to commit to coming to each day of the summit. We did design it both for time zone reasons and because we know our students have busy schedules. They often are in a lot of activities. It is only 4.5 hours to 4 hours a day. So it does not take up the entire day, but students will need to attend all of the summit days.
Martha, related to that, is your question, so it's 4 to 4.5 hours a day. Is there any after hours homework, or is that sort of more depending on students wanting to participate with each other and, you know, treating them like adults, giving them the tasks and then expecting them to do it because they've signed up?
There are things students will need to work on during the week, but that really depends on their team. So again, we give them a lot of leadership in deciding that. And we do also consider when designing summits, we know that students are in school and they have many other things going on. So we did design the in-between work to not be too onerous.
Thank you. I have another question from Earl, who's asking that we have a public speaking class starting in February. How can I require students to take part in this? We encourage teachers who are interested in their students participating to either get in touch directly with their students or their school administration. Unfortunately, we'd love to require this for every student, but I don't think that we are able to do that. But we welcome any teacher getting in touch with us on behalf of their students, or any school leader, or any parent, frankly. Anyone who wants to learn more about us is encouraged to reach out. Any other questions? All right, so here we have the last question I think that I'll ask here is, what is do we think we have a hangout space for students to, within the virtual summit architecture, to get to know each other, to get to know, you know, outside the context of the academic programming, where they can spend time with each other?
Yeah, so definitely. So I think Jen and Andy attended one of our previous virtual summits, but there will be a whole Slack for the entire summit. And there are obviously official channels on that where students discuss official things. But we also make ones for students who are interested in books or students who are interested in documentaries. So they're free to connect with each other on there. In addition, there are a few virtual summit events, I don't want to reveal them too early, that are more socially oriented. And so it's not all academic all the time. Excellent.
Well, thank you so much, everyone, from joining from all parts of the world, looking at some of your time zones. It's scary that people have woken up at 4 o'clock in the morning to take this webinar live. We will have a recording available, which we will forward to all the attendees and some registrants who've asked for a recording. You are welcome to share that with your students, with teachers in your school, in your network, and your school leaders, should you want them to understand a little bit what the Model G20 is and what this year's simulation would look like. I thank you all very much. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Martha. And good night and good morning. Have a lovely day, everyone.